welcome to the Sideboard here at the StarCityGames.com Modern Open in Syracuse, brought to you by Ultimate Guard. I'm Nick Miller alongside Kassis. How you doing, sir?
Thank you. Good. Good to live here.
Now, you've been playing this Bant Retreat to Coral Helm deck, sometimes going up to 4 colors, sometimes having the 4th color in the sideboard, but normally Bant for quite a while, and you've been putting up results across multiple events.
Yeah, at first I started with 3 colors, and I played it at Grand Prix Charlotte, top 8'd, which was really nice, obviously. And then I added a 4th color when I tried to add Nahiri to the deck, so I tried a different angle. And now this list is kind of back to 3 colors. There's no real red card in the main deck, but there are some red cards in the sideboard with a very tiny splash.
Right, and you've been kind of pioneering this build. I know you and Lloyd Kurth have been putting up results with a very similar build.
Yeah.
You've got the Knight of the Reliquary Retreat combo, which is just very good on its own, but now we've got a little card called Eldritch Evolution, which allows you to find it much quicker.
Yeah, I think when this card spoiled, everybody lost their minds. A semi-birthing pod was back in the format, so people got very excited. I'm not super sold on it being the next coming, but it's pretty good.
Right. So it allows you to kind of build the deck in a different way, in which you kind of focus on getting the combo a lot quicker.
Yeah, a lot of times I was figuring out like how many 1-drop mana producers I wanted to play. The original list ran 8 when I was in Charlotte. Then when I played Nahiri, I went down to 4. Then I was thinking like 6 was somewhere in the sweet spot. But with this card, you really just want 8, because on turn 2, any 3-drop in the deck, which is usually Knight of the Reliquary, just gets to come into play. I just beat somebody that was playing Affinity because I went for Kataki on turn 2. So that was pretty sweet. I just couldn't win after that. Actually, Fracturing gusted him like a couple turns later, and it didn't even need it. It was kind of just like, I feel like this is just all these. But yeah, I mean, just being able to go Bird, Evolution for Knights, you have 8 Knights on 2, and then Retreat on turn 3, just makes this deck really powerful, really quick. And if you fetch for Bird, Evolution, then you have a 4/4 Knight, so it's even out of bolt range.
No bolt.
Yeah. That's just really hard to beat in this format.
Right, so you had previously been playing like the Nahiri build, but now you have more of a kind of tutorable targets along with this value plan, along with Courser Crucifix as well.
Yeah, Pride Mage, for instance, I was playing 3 of him at the GP, and he was very hit or miss. It was really awkward to have to play a green and white creature and then try to play other things when you're playing multiple colors. So it was really nice to be able to go down to 1, because now I have 5 with Evolution.
Sure.
And some of the other creatures too were awkward, like Kitchen Finks is a mediocre power level. I thought maybe I would want to keep one of him in just for the certain matchups where he's just a stonewall, but also to be able to Evolution off of him to jump up to Revlark, to eventually jump up to Elishnorn. That seemed like a sweet play too. So I haven't actually gotten to pull that off yet, but it's in there just for that.
Right. When everyone saw Eldritch Evolution, they all immediately thought to the big top end of what you can kind of cheat into play.
Yeah.
And Elishnorn is one of those just home runs.
Right.
Shuts down so many decks.
Yeah, and in terms of leanness too, I didn't really want a lot of 5s and 7s. I really just wanted this to be another Knight of the Reliquary.
So you have 8 copies of Knight of the Reliquary, basically. Yeah. You got Serum Visions to help find them, and then you just have a bunch of really good green, white, and blue cards.
Right, utility creatures. Also, Voice of Resurgence is to protect it so they can't counter it. And just the good stuff that usually you play.
Okay, so how often is this deck comboing, and how often is this deck kind of just winning via value and beatdowns?
What's interesting is my old list, they used to combo like once a match, maybe 1 out of 3 games. And so far in this 5-round event, I've only actually comboed 1 person so far. But none of the Reliquaries have just been such monsters that I played 1 on 3, 1 on 4, and I think on the next turn I was attacking for 18 with just the 2 of them.
That's a good amount of damage.
Fetch. I went for Ghost Quarter, and I Ghost Quartered myself. So you really don't need to combo. That's what I love about this deck so much. It's a good deck with a combo.
Right, it has the threat of being able to combo, but you don't really need it.
Yeah, it feels like the old Survival Vengevine decks, kind of. You're just like, oh, if I draw this, I kill you quick.
Right.
If I don't draw Survival, I'm playing some Wild Mongrels and some Vengevines and getting in there.
How relevant is the other mode on Retreat? Obviously we look at it and think of the combo. Is the scrying a big thing? The
scrying is huge, because a lot of times you'll have this and no action and then it lands. And that's just an awkward situation to be in for any deck. But when you get to scry to find the Knight, and then just know that they better kill it or they just lose, and Knight already is really hard to kill, then it's been really solid. And fetch lands are not actually bad with it. Like a lot of people think, oh, if you crack a fetch, you only get to do 1, and then you crack it, but you play fetch, you trigger it, and then you hold priority, sack the fetch for another land, and then get to do 2 scries in a row and not have to worry about shuffling any good cards away.
Right, build your own preordain.
Yeah, exactly. Free preordain.
Not bad. You've also got Revelark, which is a ton of value, Scavenging Ooze, which is great in all the kind of grindy fair matchups, and Eternal Witness, similar to that.
Eternal Witness is most importantly in there because Revelark is a key function when you play against these control-y type decks. So I actually had a Camera B feature match in round 1 where I had Revelark in the table and I had a Noble Hierarch and I hit him for 5 from 10 down to 5, and on the next combat he knew he had to Lightning Helix it or he would die. So he does, it dies, it brought back Eternal Witness and a Knight of the Reliquary, and then Eternal Witness brought back Revelark and I just replayed Revelark. So he had used the spell, gained nothing except not taking combat damage, and I gained 2 free creatures out of the trade.
Seems like a pretty good deal.
Yeah, I thought so too.
Right, so your sideboard has just a smattering of bullets. We'll talk about the red cards because that, you have 1 Stomping Ground in the main deck that allows you to kind of get some cool. You got a Magus of the Moon, Avalanche Rider, Zealous Conscript, and the Static Caster.
Right.
Avalanche Rider seems pretty sweet off of something like Voice Resurgence.
Yeah, that's what I was hoping to most pull off, especially against those decks that absolutely need their lands like Tron. I just figured if I had a Voice and then went into that, I don't know what they do after that, especially when you can Surgical a Tron piece after you've killed it, then it's just game over. Yeah. And when you have 4 or 5 copies of the land destruction spell, you can safely bring in Surgical and not have it be bad.
Right.
You also have Ghost Quarter.
Build your own Fulminator Mage.
Yeah.
Right. You got multiple Fracturing Gust, multiple Extraction. Those seem to be the key cards in your sideboard outside of the tutor targets.
Yeah, I knew a lot of people would be on Affinity, Boggles, and Dredge, so I thought that those were the key cards that had to be in the sideboard that wouldn't be one of tutor targets. This deck doesn't afford you a lot of room in the sideboard because there's so many bullets that you want to play, like here. I actually had a long list. I had to cut something like 16 bullet creatures when I was building this deck. It was the hardest process narrowing it down to what I actually wanted to play. Like Burn. Burn is kind of a tough matchup. The deck's very powerful and very quick. I found out that whoever wins the die roll seems to win the game, and nothing I was boarding in was changing that fact. So I actually have 0 cards to board in against Burn, which is a very popular modern deck.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people find the matchups so hard sometimes that you don't even need cards, you just kind of hope to dodge. Or in your case, if you win the die roll, you seem to be in good shape.
Well, you board in awkward cards like Obstinate Baloth, Thragtusk, Timely Reinforcement. They're all sorcery speed, and they're playing against a deck that has 8 kinds of Skullcracks. So sometimes the cards are just really awful. You play it and they're like, Skullcrack you, untap win, because you were counting on that life to live. So all that cards are bad. This is actually the best card against Burn. Courser of Cryptics. Yeah, that incremental life gain matters so much over the course of the match. They don't deal with it well. It's a 4 toughness creature, and I don't know, the card's just sweet against them.
Yeah, just like an old standard, a Tarka Red had a hard time getting through just the 2/4 body.
Yeah.
And, Burn isn't playing Roast, so.
I played Burn in round 3, and I went turn 1 Bird, turn 2 Courser, and then turn 3 I Eldritch Evolutioned my Bird for Courser number 2, and then played a land off the top. It was a fetch too, so I think it was 3 life gains, and then for the rest of the game, it was just I didn't have to do anything else. And every land just countered a Lava Spike, countered a Lava Bolt, Lava Spike and Lightning Bolt, sorry.
All right, so you've played a bunch of different builds of this deck. You're on this one now. Which one do you think is better, and what are you kind of looking for long-term with this deck?
So with Evolution being so good and doing what it's doing, what I think I'm going to end up being is some sort of Coco Evolution list, probably not a Nahiri list. I like Nahiri, it's very powerful, it's just hard to make it work in a shell like this. So something like maybe 2 Evolutions and 3 Cocos might end up being where I'm at. And I know those numbers sound kind of weird, but Evolution can be weak to counter magic. You don't want it in certain situations, and you certainly don't want to have multiples in your hand and not be able to cast them without creatures, especially if they're shooting down everything. And you also don't want too many Cocos. If you have all these 4-drops in your hand, then you might be slow. You might not be able to fit in the right combination of spells and creatures. You probably have to cut Serum Visions, unfortunately, which I love this card in this format. It's so necessary, but to fit Coco in, you need enough 3-drops or less that this card just can't fit in the deck, which makes me very sad.
All right. Well, we'll be staying tuned to definitely see how the progression of this deck goes. You won the event in Worcester a couple weeks ago, so it's definitely got legs. Thanks for joining me here in the Sideboard.
Thanks for having me.
Stay tuned to StarCityGames.com all week long for the action here in Syracuse.